Dear lady, we have seen in recent times an American society acting as though we may disregard God when we are in church buildings. And too many persons think that we ought to disregard God in our public life, which reminds me of Romans, chapter 1, and verse 28 of the King James Version, which condemns persons that did not like to retain God in their knowledge.
Dear sir, now that you mention it, there seems to be an attitude that we are not to take God seriously in the real world that is outside of church buildings.
Not only that, ma'am, some churchgoers do not take the Bible seriously inside of church buildings. Some, or all of the decisions that are made by the American Supreme Court apparently are done without consulting the scriptures, such as allowing immorality, or disallowing some of the public posting of God's 10 Commandments, or public school Bible reading, or non-denominational Christian prayers in Jesus' name in public schools. The implication is that creatures and their laws are superior to the Creator and His law. That is unseemly.
Yes, sir. And some persons tolerate that.
It is enough to set America up to be judged by God. Although the Supremacy Clause of Article 6 was probably taken to mean that the Constitution was under God when it was ratified, without the obvious being stated, for the people had better sense back then, too many of today's people and judges apparently need to be told what is obvious to some of us, which is that God and His law are supreme. I think that too many judges on America's Supreme Court do not understand the first 16 words of the First Amendment to the American Constitution, which comprise the 2 clauses of religion. And it is my opinion that the prohibition of a religious test of Article 6 has to do with a sectarian or denominational test, not whether a person is a Christian or not. That opinion is partly supported by an article called, "No Religious Test Shall Ever Be Required," by Oliver Ellsworth, written under the pseudonym, Line Holder 7. It was dated for December 17, 1787, which appeared in the Connecticut Courant of Hartford.
Sir, if you're right, and most of the Supreme Court judges don't understand some parts of the Constitution, how can they rightly judge certain cases?
If I'm right, they apparently cannot rightly judge pertinent cases, which is a problem that needs to be redressed or rectified. Admittedly, some parts of the Constitution are ambiguous during our time. There needs to be a clarifying or rectifying amendment to provide us the liberty to obey God in this country, not only in our churches and homes, but also publicly in our schools, businesses, governments, the entertainment industry, and all areas of our God-given lives.
I like that idea, sir. I am concerned about America's children and would like to see them trained up in a Christian and moral way. But it seems that the media and governments are against that. That makes me sad.
Madam, I'm sorry to hear that. I am not happy about the present ungodly situation of our society. When I consider the secular, ungodly, and immoral way of too many Americans, I become concerned that terror can be a result of that, and probably has occurred because of it.
But isn't all terror wrong?
Some terror is wrong. But according to the scriptures, there is a terror of God, and terror can be a result of a people that disobey God's commandments. Sometimes the people are wrong, and get what they deserve.
Sir, would you be kind enough to cite the scriptures for that?
Of course, ma'am. Genesis, chapter 35, and verse 5, and Leviticus 26.
I've read the Bible, but I would like to look those scriptures up, for our federal government is not telling us of that. But the government will treat some of us in an undignified way at airports for the ostensible purpose of protecting us from terror.
Yes, ma'am. That is a problem, which can be traced to some ungodly Supreme Court opinions, which ought to be checked or stopped, or countered with a clearly written amendment to direct that court in an unmistakable and godly way.
Are you referring to a Theonomic amendment, which you told me about when you were explaining the Establishment Clause?
Yes, ma'am.
It sounds like something that we need, because I do not think that it is right for some persons to imply that we must ignore God in the real world. If you would be kind enough to tell me about it, I would like to take the time to listen to you.
It should be my pleasure. Dear Madam, there are various ways to write a theonomic constitutional amendment. The one that I am proposing has the file name of 2008.03.27.2a. That is the following. The Holy Scriptures, open parenthesis, the Scriptures, closed parenthesis, which include the law of God, open parenthesis, the Creator, closed parenthesis, are the Christian Bible of the Old and New Testaments, which is expressed in the King James Version. To obey the Creator, defend religion, open parenthesis, Christianity, closed parenthesis, from ungodly laws, and produce a godly country. No thing in this Constitution shall be contrary to the law of God, and the rest of the Scriptures. If anything in this Constitution is contrary to the Scriptures shall prevail.
Would you explain why you propose clarifying the word religion to mean Christianity?
Of course. By the government of the United States presently using the word religion broadly to include more than Christianity, that confuses the meaning of the Constitution, and it has produced an unscriptural diversity, which has produced problems in this country that we could have avoided if we had a strong enough of a character to do that which is right and God's side when considering Deuteronomy 13, John 10, John chapter 14, and verse 6, and other scriptures. By either clarifying or correcting the word religion of the First Amendment to mean Christianity, that could eventually make an harmonious or better society, which we had before the present diversity and idolatry, which is partly a result of weak politicians that are apparently more concerned about pleasing some voters than pleasing God. An example of a better society can be seen by reading the original agreement or Constitution of the New Haven Colony of the year of 1639. A properly written Theonomic amendment should clarify the establishment and free exercise clauses of the First Amendment of America's present Constitution to correctly mean the following. The United States Legislature may not legislate to favor or prefer a denomination or sect of Christianity more than any other Christian sect, nor may the Congress make any law to stop the unlimited or unrestricted practice of Christianity. The 6 words, more than any other Christian sect, are implied. A theonomic amendment should allow legislators to legislate directly from the Scriptures, or to make laws according to the Scriptures. It should prohibit laws that are contrary to the Scriptures. A theonomic amendment to the Constitution should allow executives to directly execute or enforce the Scriptures. And it should direct judges to judge according to the Scriptures, or to consult the Scriptures when a pertinent matter arises that God handled in the Bible. When the laws of men are inconsistent with God's expressed will, a theonomic amendment should compel judges to favor the Creator and His law more rather than creatures and the laws of men. And a theonomic amendment should allow the people to live our lives in a godly and moral way, such as allowing landlords to not rent to couples that would live in sin.
Thank you, sir. Would you explain why you chose to specify the King James Version?
Yes, ma'am. And you're welcome. Of course, there has to be one standard in consideration of Exodus, chapter 12, and verse 49, lest there be a conflict. There are various reasons why I think that the King James Version is the best. One reason is that Luke, chapter 2, and verse 33 of most modern versions is obviously erroneous, for it uses the word father rather than Joseph. That conflicts with the Scriptures, such as Mark, chapter 1, and verse 1, which teach that Jesus Christ is the Son of God.
My thanks to you, dear sir, for caring enough about our country to propose a theonomic amendment to our Constitution. I appreciate your concern. If we ratify a theonomic amendment by our representatives, we could obey God more in this country and enforce God's high standard, without as much concern about being sued as though obedience to God is wrong. Too many public office holders and political candidates present their ideas in such a way that they seem to not like to retain God in their knowledge. I read in Proverbs, chapter 3, and verses 5 through 6 in the Bible that God shall direct our paths if we acknowledge Him.
You are welcome, madam. A considerable number of persons are not worthy to live in a godly society, for they are selfish and inconsiderate and irreverent. Although I, by the grace of God, made the theonomic proposal to please God, and so that I can live in a better society, to be candid, I am glad that there are some persons left here in America that also love God. And for persons such as yourself, dear woman, it is my pleasure to work to improve our society in a godly manner.